The right kind of is enforcement
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Well, hello, America, and welcome to the Glenn Beck Program and to The Blaze. This is the network that you are building. I want you right now to take a deep breath and panic! Panic! Because we are 2 days away from sequestration. The cuts automatically will take place. And if there is no agreement, the meat cleaver will blindly just start chopping us limb from limb. The military is going to be gutted. Emergency personnel dead in the streets. Border Patrol agents gone. Teachers pulled apart. Their heads and their eyes. Their heads will be in one classroom. Their eyes will be in another. Parents won't have daycare, and daycare won't have children. And children will stop having puppy dogs. And all because the Democrats and the Republicans are so ideologically opposed. There's so much distance between the Republicans and the Democrats. And actually, the distance between the two, no, that's actually not true. They're one in the same. And the sequester debate proves that they are the same. How? Well, both sides are claiming that some action has to be taken. We have to take action before these draconian cuts happen on Friday in order to avert real pain and panic, financial crisis, and teachers' heads being in one room and their eyes in another, and no puppy dogs. President Obama has painted a picture of Armageddon. His administration has released hundreds of detained illegal immigrants awaiting deportation trials, and in order to make sure that ICE's detained population level stays within ICE's current budget, because you got to do that, right? We got to let the prisoners go free. Soon, on Saturday, they're going to open up all the prisons. He is giving us a self-inflicted wound just to further his agenda. President Obama recalled an aircraft carrier from the Persian Gulf because he feared impending budget cuts. Wait a minute. Hold on. Isn't the Persian Gulf where we get all of our oil that we can't drill for here? And so we have to get it from over there. And isn't the whole region on fire? Even Bob Woodward, you know, the Nixon Watergate journalist, says it's madness. Watch.
Under the Constitution, the president is commander-in-chief and employs the force. And so we now have the president going out because of this piece of paper and this agreement. I can't do what I need to do to protect the country. That's a kind of madness.
Kind of a madness, isn't it? Yeah. But good thing we have somebody talking sense to us. Because on the other side, we have John Boehner saying, we've got to act before Friday. Watch.
We have moved a bill in the House twice. We should not have to move a third bill before the Senate gets off their ass and begins to do something.
He used a bad word. He must be angry. Here's the deal. Sequestration, 2% of the budget. 2. That's a teeny tiny meaningless cut in the increase in spending, isn't it? Even with the sequester cuts, they will spend, listen to me, even with the cuts, they will spend $15 billion more of your money this year than last year. Let me put it this way. The sequestration, 9 days of federal spending. That's it, 9 days. Freak out! When the best debate we can get in Washington is, Do we cut that spending increase by 2%? Or do we raise taxes by 2%? It is clear we're not getting that sacred word, diversity. We're certainly not getting any closer to solving anything. Let me show you what this means in your own home. If I had to ask you, let's say you went shopping, and you came back and I said, honey, what? You see, I don't have a job. We've borrowed everything we have from the Chinese family down the block, and they're getting a little pissy, and we're about to lose our house and everything else. If she looked at you and said, everything here is a staple. And then she said, I gotta tell you, okay, all right, you want me to cut? Okay, I'm cutting right now. There's gonna be milk, there's not gonna be any meat, and no baby formula. That's it, no baby formula. I hope you have a good time, Mr. Hate Monger. Would you send your wife to a psychiatrist? Because I would, and I might visit an attorney. You might leave these. Leave these, okay? Okay, and because I'm living with a mad woman, I'm also keeping the beer. But I'm getting rid of the magazines and the candy and the chips and it's only 2%. I can still have the donuts and the beer. You're telling me we can't live with the baby little pop? We can't live with, two little baby and the Mentos. And People magazine, we also need Life and Style Weekly. Oh, and In Touch, really? That's what they're trying to get you to believe. Except I don't even know if they're doing that. This is all we're asking them to cut. This. Can't. Family will burn to death. Everything is over if we... I'm sick of it. Left and right used to mean Democrat and Republican. There used to be a difference, right? It's a lie. It's a lie. The scale we look at is left and right, but that's not true. Republicans and Democrats, that's not true. That's not what it is. That's not the American system, that's a European system. We've talked about this for a long, long time. But it's time we start putting this scale actually into action. We're not finished with this scale yet. I have to figure out a way to make it much more understandable than this, but this is what's in my head. This is how I'm trying to design this network. On this end is anarchy. On this end is totalitarianism. That's the real scale. Those two ends. And everything in between is what's happening to us. And really, right now, they will tell you that this is all that matters. Everybody over here is crazy. But they won't say everybody in totalitarianism. They won't say Van Jones is part of CNN. Michael Moore, Occupy Wall Street. They won't say those guys are crazy. That's in the totalitarian realm. But all the networks cover this. And Fox News, they'll get down to here, and they'll get down to, I'm not sure where these guys are, because this to me is the line where you start to get into GOP, and it doesn't make you a bad guy. I don't think these guys are Marxists, but they will, is Boehner and McConnell and Hatch, they're not Marxists. But are they principle men? Or are they men that will just do what they have to? Will they slide wherever they have to slide to keep the GOP alive? I'm not sure if Rubio and Paul Ryan, I'm not sure. I hope they're down here someplace, but I'm not sure. Because I think they could be flipped. We have to have people that can't be flipped. But if you start down here, here's Julian Assange. I'm not sure. Is he an anarchist or is he working on the totalitarian side? I don't know. He says he is for freedom, but I'm not sure. Because down at this end, it gets blurry. But here's Penn Jillette. This is the Articles of Confederation. Here's Penn Jillette. Here's John Mackey. You want the left and right? It's actually up and down. You have Mackey. He's a liberal, but he's a libertarian. He's down here by the Constitution. Ron Paul, Rand Paul. Cruz, you keep coming down. Keep coming down. Now, Fox will go from here, and they'll say, yeah, well, John McCain, he's a little nutty sometimes, but Hillary and Bill, they're pretty good. So that's their scale. Here's Fox. Here's CNN. Well, he's on the edge of craziness. That John Boehner, he's a way out there, isn't he? And the rest of us are like, think he's way out there. For them, he is. He's way out there. And they generally will go down to Nancy Pelosi. And that's it. They might reach a little farther, and they seem to be reaching closer here because that's Van Jones, and he's a commentator for CNN. And then you have MSNBC. And their crazy scale is a crazy Republican like Joe Scarborough. He's so Republican, I can't even stand it. And that crazy fat governor, huh? He's nuts. And then they go all the way here into totalitarianism because they have him as a commentator. CNN as a commentator. This guy's a hero on MSNBC. Who's covering this? Who's even in this scale? The idea is to stop talking about Republicans and Democrats and start talking about people who love freedom. America is only an idea. That's it. And if we lose this idea and we replace it with a European idea, we will suffer their same fate. We are blinded by our commitment to parties, which means nothing. Nothing. That's why you're not interested in this. At least I'm not. We're bound by our commitment to principles, or at least we used to. Down here, you have to be bound by principles. Liberty. Principles that were declared in 1776 when 56 delegates stated their independence from a crown. And I know they're old dusty Whig people, but they were declaring that they were and always would be free because they were endowed by their creator with certain rights. The founders never asked for freedom from the king because a king couldn't give it to them, at least an earthly king. It was God that gave man freedom. They just declared it. They said, wait a minute. We don't have to listen to you. And they were willing to die for it. Give me liberty or give me death. Death to tyrants. Death to tyranny. Death to somebody who is telling you how to live your lives and could go into your home and do whatever he wanted to. Who could kill you without a trial. Death to anybody like that. Now, up until this point in history, man couldn't choose his own identity. This is the first time. This is the first time that Shakespeare's line meant something. To be or not to be. Who do you want to be? Who are you? What are you? You could decide. But the questions the Founding Fathers had to answer, had never been answered before, was how much government is enough? And how much is too much? Because you have to have some government, right? The founders believed in some government. The Declaration declared inalienable rights, but it also said the rights have to be secured. But by whom? Government. Some sort of government is necessary to protect life, liberty, and property, and the pursuit of happiness, which is why I know Julian Assange is a liar, which I know that the people who are anarchists, deep anarchists, are most likely liars or they're stupid, because you have to have some government. The only way to secure rights from an out-of-control government is to have some sort of government instituted among men that derives its just powers from the consent of the governed. Okay, that's great, but what kind of government would that be? Well, nobody agreed. Hamilton said, we should have a king, and they're like, okay, no. Jefferson said, farmers. Farmers are better rulers than lawyers. I agree with that one. Sam Adams was a devout Christian, so is George Washington, but Thomas Paine was an atheist, so they had some pretty big obstacles. They didn't agree on stuff. We tend to oversimplify when we look back at our founders. We say, I love the founders, I agree with everything the founders did. The founders didn't agree with each other on most things. We say we agree with the founders, while the college-age people now, who are taught lies about the founders. They dismiss them now as irrelevant or selfish or racist. And just about everybody who's talking about the founders are in some way or another wrong. I want to focus on this. The founders didn't agree on much, but they had strong areas of agreement. Despite their diverse ideas, they had strong principles grounded in liberty. They all understood government abuses. They all did it. So together they adopted the principles, or the stakes, if you will, stakes that hold up the tent that everybody can get under, that protected them from abuses of a king or an out-of-control government. These were loosely 10 stakes: the right to free speech, the right to protect yourself, the right to not have somebody come into your house and just search your stuff or take your stuff or say, hey, these people are living here or whatever. That was the Articles of Confederation, those loose ideas. I believe what the founders did because they believed that man is a sovereign of himself. And out of this came the Articles of Confederation. But there were problems, because people were so obsessed with an out-of-control government, and it's happening to us again, that they kept saying, no government, smaller government. And so the government got so small, the states had no power at all. The country slid into anarchy. Some states got rid of their governors because they hated power so much. I mean, so many of us can relate to how they were feeling. It's easy to say, no government would be better than the government these guys are giving us, intruding all on our lives. Look how corrupt these guys are. I don't want any of them. That's how they felt. But they went too far, which I think was probably more noble to go that way, to go too far towards freedom than too far towards the monarchy or totalitarianism. But neither end works. They both end in slavery. People were constantly impeaching and electing leaders on a whim. They were just throwing people out of office. There was no leadership. The country was in a constant state of disarray and turmoil. America was being shoved around in Europe. It couldn't defend itself. The states were bullying each other. There was no army, no navy, nothing. There wasn't enough government. See, one of the false assumptions about the Tea Party and conservatives is somehow we're all anti-government. No. These people are anti-government. These people are anti-government. But these people are not. Even some of these are not. Some government is good. Government gives you currency that you can have the full faith and credit in. Do you have that now? No. That's bad government. It has to bring stability and security. Do you feel secure in your person with liberty? I don't. There is no liberty without security. But we have traded our liberty for security, and they have taught us over and over again we will deserve neither and lose both if we ever do it. So how did they fix it? Well, they gave the government just a little more power. They moved from here to here. This really is the line. You tip too far that way and it's over. But Washington, Madison, and Adams, they feared the tyranny of the majority. What is that? That's this. The tyranny of the majority is mob rule. Mob rule. We are 99 that will surround the person's house. It's why Occupy Wall Street failed. Does anybody truly believe that a mob would be less abusive than this mob? No, we're trading one mob for another. It would be just as abusive. They would just abuse different people. That's why America is not a democracy, we're a republic. They made sure that there were checks and balances, 3 branches to balance each other out. The model for the United States Constitution is based on the idea that everyone is free and can decide things for himself. No government was ever intended to rule man, not in this country, but instead it was to preserve man's right to rule himself. The model doesn't have a Newt Gingrich at the center of the universe as the, quote, teacher of the rules of civilization. That's what he said about himself. I'm sorry, America, he's way down on this end of the scale. It doesn't have a Cass Sunstein that's nudging us into what we eat, drink, do, or drive. It doesn't have a Michael Bloomberg telling us the same things. This model is the best one that the world has ever seen to protect our freedom. so man can do what he wants, as long as he is not harming anyone else. At least that's the way I describe freedom, liberty, and libertarianism. It's a place where we all have responsibility to care for ourselves and a responsibility not to harm one another. It's a system where the godless and the godly can stand together and verbally duke it out, even though we disagree with each other. But once the third person comes out and starts to say, you know what, we should get that guy to shut up, it's your responsibility to say, no, 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 wait a minute, I'm with him. It's a place where we don't force each other to believe the same thing. That diminishes us. It's a place where you pull for the same cause. Maximum liberty, minimum intrusion from the government. This is the space I'm trying to build for this network. And it's tough because nobody's ever done that. A space reminiscent of where our founders stood. And we don't have a litmus test that you have to pass before being welcomed in. Do you stand against kings and tyrants? Are you moving towards this direction, totalitarianism, or freedom? Which way are you moving? And we don't have to agree on everything. We won't. But we have to agree on one thing, that we're walking toward maximum freedom, not the other way. John Stuart Mill said, he's the first person, by the way, who defined liberty as opposition to unlimited state power. He came up with the harm principle, and this is what it is. The only purpose for which power can be rightfully exercised over any member of civilized community against his will is to prevent harm to others. His own good, either physical or mental, is not sufficient warrant. So in other words, you can't do it. It doesn't matter if it's bad for him. It doesn't matter. Is he going to harm others? That's the only way you can interfere. And we've always lived that way until now. Cass Sunstein is the one that's pushing it through, and both Republicans and Democrats are for him. Here's what Cass Sunstein said about Mill. He said, people make a lot of mistakes, and those mistakes can prove extremely damaging. Yes, they can. But if you use those mistakes, they actually lift you up in the end. So his solution is this. A new form of paternalism. So in other words, somebody gets to be your dad. One that preserves freedom of choice, but also steers citizens in directions that will make their lives go better by their own lights. Really? So Sunstein is championing something called choice architecture. In other words, forcing grocery stores to make fresh vegetables more prominent in their design layout, rearranging content on websites, the order of items on a restaurant menu. So you're not losing choice per se, but you can't find that thing that you always like to eat at this restaurant. Where is it? Your choices are manufactured. There are no bad options, really. Welcome to the progressive utopia. It's like Cass Sunstein's own little Truman Show, where he's up in that fake moon designing your life. Opinions like his will only lead this country into totalitarianism. He's up there and he's saying, put another roadblock on the road. He wants to leave and go over the bridge. Can't make him, just throw another roadblock on. Well, you saw the movie, you know how it ends. Truman says, I want to be free. I want to go where I want to go. So not only do we disagree with him, but like Jefferson said, it is our right, but not just our right, but our duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. Well, where are the new guards? Who are the new guards? Who can you possibly trust? Who should we look to? Who will help teach this? Who will help lead this? America is not perfect. We weren't perfect during our founding, and we won't be perfect in the future. But by nature, man is flawed. But if we all take responsibility for ourselves and act like men and women who are determined to be free and devoted to form a more perfect union, knowing we'll never get it exactly right, we can actually move in the right direction and probably find, oh, I don't know, if we work really hard, maybe 2% of spending cuts in the first 5 minutes. And that's how I define liberty. That's how I define it, at least as we're trying to put this network together. And this network will evolve and grow, and I will evolve and grow. We don't consider it our movement. Whose movement is liberty? That's God's movement, freedom. Our job is just to join a conversation in which we can hopefully, ultimately, preserve a more perfect and more free union.
One of the greatest things about allowing people the freedom to do what they want is that you will see them innovate. You'll see them create. You'll see them be able to go places that we have never been able to go before because everybody else in the world knows something different.
The best way to connect people and to get people to, come into the fold and try on some new ideas is to really talk to them from a personal level.
I think that libertarian values the ideas that nobody from the top down should be telling you what to do, and free markets and individual choice in marketplaces. These are all really young and really hot ideas.
The beauty of our society today is that we can subscribe to all these different philosophies and weave them together in a way that we think works best and feel free to express that on our campuses.
My name is Adele, and I'm a libertarian because I want to come up with free market, alternative, creative solutions to things that governments do. So I want to be a solution as opposed to critiquing.
My name is Jackie Bodner. I'm a libertarian because I believe in lower taxes, less government, and more freedom.
I'm Zach Slayback, and I'm a libertarian because freedom allows for human creativity and prosperity to flourish.
People follow very different philosophies within SFL, which is one of my favorite things about it. I disagree vehemently with a lot of people, but we share this common core belief that we're best when we're governed least. And so I think by having those conversations with each other, we really push each other and think beyond what we may have thought the day before. So I really like that, it really helps individuals grow, and that's what we're supposed to do. This is a time in our lives where we're supposed to be pushing ourselves and thinking differently.
Tonight we have three libertarians. We have Jacob Hornberger, the founder and president of Future of Freedom Foundation. It's a nonprofit libertarian foundation. We have Jack Hunter, a radio host, columnist, director of outreach for Young Americans for Liberty. And Zachary Slayback. He is a freshman student at the University of Penn, which is, he is also on the executive board. He now is Students for Liberty, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. I have you guys in because I want to begin a conversation with you on where do we even start to get people like me, even 3 or 4 years ago, to say, okay, libertarianism makes sense. Because I think most people say, when they answer questions, they'll say, yeah, I'm a libertarian, until it gets too personal because it hits into their sweet spot. Or you see somebody who says, and which one of you guys says legalize drugs now? Or all of you? All of you? Now? Like right now?
States' rights.
Yeah.
I'm a
Okay.
states' rights guy on that.
Okay. All right, I'm probably closer to you. My thing is, well, let me finish the question and then let's talk about that. How do we get people to understand that? Because that's an automatic, people go, we're not going to be able to, we're not going to do heroin. When we have so much candy on the table, wouldn't it be better to take the candy off the table first? Or if I may, remember I had milk and meat and baby formula. What you guys are doing is saying, to me, saying, take the baby formula off. If this is a meal of freedom, take the baby formula off. Well, all we need is milk, meat, and potatoes. But the baby formula, so many people, including me on some things, infants, we haven't seen meat in a long time. Freedom, we haven't seen it. Mm-hmm. You take the baby formula away after you wean them off it, and then have them drink milk, and then have them get to meat. You guys are jumping right to meat.
Well, I think that that's not really quite the valid analogy that we want to be looking for. Because if we were to legalize drugs this afternoon, yeah, we do have some problems with people that are on welfare and might end up using their welfare money to go and buy heroin.
No, not welfare. People are not responsible for themselves. You're going to have all of the people who have grown up in a society where, got to give it to me. I need that service. You're going to have people screaming for services or screaming that we have to do something about these poor homeless people who have needles in their arms.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the people who are using drugs, it's the people who will want to pay with my money and your money to help those people, and you're not compassionate.
Politically, you can't get from point A to point B without there being an in-between. B being the ideal political world we would like, and A where we are now. There's going to be some messiness in between. That's just human nature. That's the way it's got to be. People as, libertarian as Ron Paul, who inspired the movement that created organizations like Young Americans for Liberty and Students for Liberty, never argues that there's some sort of libertarian utopia that you could get there overnight. You have to start where people are and work towards liberty in a practical sense.
Okay.
But I think it's a lot of like what you did in your introductory segment, Glenn. You set forth a vision of liberty. And you're not there worrying about how people are going to respond to this. You're setting forth what you consider as the truth. And you're really looking for people who are saying, hey, there's some really bad things going on in this country. And I think that's happening more than ever.
Oh, yeah.
The welfare state's collapsing. Everywhere you look, the foreign policy, the war on terrorism, the drug war, everything's a giant mess. And I think we need to capitalize on that as libertarians and not mince our words, because the libertarian philosophy has a consistency to it. It's entirely consistent to abolish the welfare state immediately as it is to abolish the drug war immediately, because people have a right to be free.
Right.
Today.
But you don't want, okay, let me rephrase this. Do you think Rand Paul doesn't believe in that? Is Rand Paul not a libertarian?
He is a libertarian.
I don't know.
And he's also a conservative. And they're not, you could be the same thing.
I disagree with that. I think libertarianism and conservatism are distinctly different ideologies and philosophies. Libertarianism and conservatism during the Cold War may have had a common enemy in communism, but that time is past us now.
Oh, no, it hasn't. Are you telling me totalitarianism, you're telling me that theological or theocracies aren't popping up? I mean, there's somebody always want to be in control of the human race.
There will always be.
Right.
But what we had during the Cold War was distinctly different than what we have now. We don't have the Iron Curtain over in Eastern Europe right now.
No, now we have people who behead you.
That's a completely different ideology than what we're dealing with. And that's when we bring libertarianism together and with conservatism, that is different when we deal with these Islamic philosophies that want to behead us. So when we look at...
Because I'm a conservative, and I'll live next to anybody. If they're not trying to kill me or my family, they're not trying to hurt me. If it neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. I mean, I get in a lot of trouble because I'm a Mormon. But I'll hang out with Jews and Baptists and everything else, and everybody's like, oh, you're in the wrong camp. You can't do that. What are you talking about? They're good people. I like them. We don't agree on theology, but I like them.
That's really the beautiful thing about libertarianism. And I'm going to go back to what you said when you opened up the discussion by saying that with our system, the godly and the godless can come together and have these discussions.
So why is conservative values, why is that?
They can be different, but they're not necessarily different. I have to respectfully disagree with my friend Zach here. There's a reason that when Barry Goldwater said that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice, that's a very libertarian statement, that somebody like our friend Judge Andrew Napolitano would dedicate a book to him and call him the father of the American libertarian movement. That's the godfather of American conservatism as well.
Right.
You could go as far as
Ronald Reagan said that they're one and the same. I mean, I'm sorry, that libertarianism gave birth as well.
Well, that's exactly right. From a historical perspective, and I could do a whole hour on this, just the sort of weaving of libertarianism and conservatism. Bill Buckley, in his book Flying High about the Goldwater campaign, calls The Conscience of a Conservative a libertarian tome. I mean, it's just indisputable that libertarianism has been a major component of American conservatism. More important than that, here in 2013, it is impractical to say that libertarians can't have anything to do with conservatives or work with conservatives, because you have millions of people out there, 2 million of which voted for Ron Paul, millions of more which would support other candidates of that type or that ilk or libertarian, who don't want to be told, well, you can't be a part of this because this is libertarian and you're different. You can't do that. I'm a conservative. I'm also a libertarian. I'm an independent-minded thinker. We all need to work towards liberty in our own ways. And, you know, there's labels out there that sometimes they matter, sometimes they don't. I like your idea of getting away from that and getting closer to freedom. That's really what we need to do.
We had to take a quick break, but I'm a conservative. John Mackey is a liberal. I don't have a problem with John Mackey. I can be in the same group with him any day of the week. I mean, I don't know how he feels, but I have no problem with that. Back in a minute.
so important right here.
All right, we're back. We're just let me. I think we agree. Do we agree on where the people are, the voters are, not how they vote, but where they live? Would you agree with what I'm laying out here?
Yeah, I think that's our target audience.
Okay.
I don't think it's in Washington.
No, it's not in Washington. Do you guys all agree they'll never get it? I mean, maybe
No, you just want to change the incentives for the people in Washington by changing the ideas on the ground for the people who are the voters. And this is really what it comes down to with, you have Friedrich Hayek sitting here on the desk right now. You have The Road to Serfdom. Hayek has a phenomenal essay called The Intellectuals in Socialism, where he talks all about how intellectuals and the second-hand dealers of ideas are the ones who really change what people who end up voting these politicians in believe. So what we really need to change are the people peddling the ideas to society, which is why it's wonderful we're here actually being able to talk about that.
Right. You don't need to change the people. You need to gain access. And I just said during the break, I'm trying to give access. I'm trying really hard, and I keep getting my hand bitten by libertarians. Because they'll be like, you're not pure enough.
Well,
and I'm like,
well, that's exactly.
I didn't know there was a litmus test.
That's exactly right, Glenn. There's a difference between political theory, which is important because that's what keeps our principles, and political action, which is useless unless there's principles behind them. But you need both. To just have these ideas and no actual base that you can talk to them about, or actual people, or people like yourself who have millions of people listening to you, you have to have those avenues. The libertarian critique of the Republican Party and conservatism is so crucial to any of that being worth anything more. Let's take an example. We started off with this sort of cartoon caricature of libertarians as being for drugs, right? There was an instance, I think you talked about it on your show recently, where Ann Coulter, actually at the Students for Liberty conference, called basically all the libertarians a bad word because she said they were sort of kowtowing to the left for being for drugs.
I think they believe it.
I think she believes that, and I like it.
No, I think they believe. You guys believe in, it's not kowtowing.
Well, the point I was going to make, the libertarian critique of drug policy is just not unique to libertarians. And Ann Coulter wanted to say that was just sucking up to the left. Was William F. Buckley at National Review sucking up to the left in the mid-90s when they came out for drug legalization? Was Milton Friedman sucking up to the left when he thought that marijuana should be legal? Was Pat Robertson, when a year or two ago, when he said we should put people in jail for this stuff, sucking up to the left? Or should we re-examine the issue as libertarians, as conservatives, as people with common sense?
Well, I will tell you that this all started with the progressives when they started, the FDA, and we've been conditioned for a long time to do that. I mean, you look back 100 years ago, and we were not the same people. We didn't go to the government and ask the permission to do that. We considered ourselves to be adults. So. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that there's two levels that we should be arguing at, and one is the utilitarian level, that things just haven't worked. The drug war, I think everyone has to agree, it's just a mess.
Yeah.
It's horrible collateral damage. But the other argument is the one that I like, and that's the moral argument. And I think that's what distinguishes libertarians from conservatives and liberals, which I look at it, libertarians and statists. And we argue the moral argument. People have a right to be free. They have a right to be free to decide what to do with their own money.
But can I tell you something? When I was on CNN, and I don't remember which person drank themselves to death, some starlet or something drank themselves to death, and they said, what could we have done to stop this? And they came to me because I was the token alcoholic, I guess. And I said, nothing. You have to understand, people have a different bottom. I happened to hit my bottom, and that was enough pain for me, and I said, I want out. But other people are like, they'll never hit it. Death is their bottom, and you'll never be able to stop them. You can't stop an alcoholic. But I was looked at, I remember Paula Zahn looking at me like, oh my gosh, you're a monster. Because I said, it was Anna Nicole Smith that I said that about. You're a monster for saying that. You can't stop some people. But society's not ready for that. So how do you get them to be ready?
But we're not stopping them now, how it is.
No, I know that, but you have to gain enough esteem. They position people. I mean, look, the reason why libertarianism is not even seen as an option is because none of the networks, the progressive movement back in the early teens and 20s, took the libertarian chair away from the table and said, well, that's crazy, so we're not even going to have you at the table. And so that's why you've got to find your way back into that table to be able to convince people. Hang on, I've got to take a quick break. Let's talk a little bit about something that we can agree on, and that is, can we find 2% in sequestration? I mean, do you think anybody even believes this incredible lie?
I think most Americans see through the ruse right now. You're talking about how do we get to freedom. I think most Americans are going to be fine with this sequester cut. We're getting better on civil liberties. They're through with this ridiculous foreign policy. I think we're getting there. It's not going to happen overnight.
Getting
but
better
I think
with
we
the
do.
foreign policy. Well, we've got Brennan coming in and the CIA.
Well, I'm talking about public attitudes. I think the American people are ready to go in a better direction. Maybe not the leadership.
Yeah, I mean, I have to tell you, I was probably the biggest rah-rah military guy at September 11th. I was, let's go. But I also was, let's go kick their butt and come home. Let's declare war and come home. I don't think there's a soul in America that even knows what we're fighting for anymore. I don't even know what is going on.
That was Ron Paul's position going into Afghanistan. Let's go there, kick butt, come home.
Right.
Most Americans
I think
felt
we
that
need to
way.
recognize is that the problems that we have as a country with the anger and hatred is generated by what this national security state does to people overseas. Here, we argue, get the government out of our lives as far as the free market goes. We can't place ourselves in the shoes of foreigners that are saying, go home, leave us alone. Just take your government and get it out of our regions of the world.
This is, I think, something where you really see the demarcation between libertarians and conservatives, because historically, libertarians and conservatives both want government to stay out of their lives, in many aspects here domestically. But historically speaking, conservatives have been very gung-ho about going abroad and forcing our government down other people's throats.
I will, because we were very misguided. I mean, you know, when you read Teddy Roosevelt, I used to like Teddy Roosevelt until you read Teddy Roosevelt.
Right.
And, you know, we were very misguided because we thought we have a responsibility. Conservatives thought, you know, this is a good way to help people. But I don't think anybody really believes that now. I mean, we didn't get the Statue of Liberty. We're so misguided. We think France gave us this present. They didn't. They were trying to do it for their own people. When you mind your own business and it works, other people look and say, what is that? I want something like that. Look what they're doing. And that's how we got here. But it's been wrapped by the distortion of history to have us believe that, well, we were shopping it. We have to go and shop it elsewhere. We don't. And that's a huge mistake. And most conservatives thought we have a responsibility to help people. We do, by setting a good example.
Right. And they're taking us down, Glenn. They're taking us down the road to Greece with bankruptcy. It's both the welfare state and the warfare state. This sequestration, it's nothing. It's minor.
It's especially when you look at how much we're going to have to do to actually remain stable and solvent. I mean, it's going to be a little bit more than 2% in the end. Back in just a minute. Thank you. On tomorrow's program, Dr. Ben Carson. We've had a lot of mail, people saying, you should talk to him. Okay, for the full hour tomorrow. And Mark and Roma Burnett on the Bible, a series on the History Channel that you have to see this Sunday. Until then, until actually the radio show tomorrow on most of this network from Dallas. Good night, America.